Sending money to Jamaica can be such a hassle, not to mention the transfer fees. With SendWave, you don't pay money transfer fees. SendWave makes it easy to send money to family and friends quickly and securely. Did I mention secure? With SendWave, users can easily transfer money from their debit cards to any recipient's bank accounts or cash pickup locations in Jamaica. Download the SendWave app to your phone. Set up your account by following the instructions on the app along with the verification process to make it secure. As listeners of the Strictly Facts, a Guide to Caribbean History and Culture podcast, sign up for SendWave and you will receive a $20 credit for your first transfer. Click the link in the description to receive the credit when you download and sign up for SendWave. The value may change to $10, $15, or up to $20 at any time. SendWave. For here, for there, for home. Disclaimer, SendWave makes money off the exchange rate. FX rates are subject to change. Welcome to Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture, hosted by me, Alexandria Miller. Strictly Facts teaches the history, politics, and activism of the Caribbean and connects these themes to contemporary music and popular culture. Strictly Facts family, how are you doing? It is a beautiful month of March, also known as Women's History Month. And so as we are transitioning from Black History Month into Women's History Month, what better way to do so than a story of a Black Caribbean woman who you might not have otherwise ever heard before. And so before jumping into really highlighting the history of this extraordinary woman, I will ask you first off the bat, do you know the story of the Caribbean woman who, while pregnant, helped lead a massive revolution in 1870 Martinique, who, it is stated, yelled, "I would burn my own mother and even God if necessary," end quote, in her fight for Black liberation? If not, I'll definitely be sharing more about her today. That woman is none other than Lumina Sophie, also known as Marie Philomène Ruptus, or as she was commonly known as Surprise. She embodied courage, resistance, and strength amidst what some of historians describe as a moment in Martinican history that could have really easily been glossed over or overlooked, for it not the unity of Black Martinicans. Though her name might not be as famous as others, her contributions to Black liberation in Martinique make her a remarkable figure in the fight for freedom and justice. Lumina Sophie was born on November 5th, 1848, less than 6 months after slavery was abolished in the island. She came from a line of fellow extraordinary women like her maternal grandmother, Renee Sophie, who ensured her children had at least a basic education, as well as her own mother, Zulma, who did her very best to remain self-sufficient as a seamstress and farmer, even amongst economic challenges post-emancipation. Lumina Sophie's defining role in Caribbean history was sparked when, on February 19th, 1870, there was an altercation between a white Navy employee, Aubier de Montanan, and a Black male bricklayer, Leopold Lupin. The two men had very different accounts of what transpired, the former claiming that Lupin was the aggressor by standing in the middle of the road and forcing Montanan's horse into the bush, while Lupin and several others who were there and were witnesses to the event claimed quite the opposite, that in fact Lupin didn't move out of Montanan's way swiftly enough, and Montanan returned his aggression by whipping Lupin. Lupin sought recourse from the government, but his complaint was ultimately declined, thus leading him to seek justice 2 months later in his own hands. And I mean that quite literally. Maintenon, because of the beating he received, filed a complaint against Lupin, which resulted in a fine and 5 years jail time for Lupin. The situation and obvious racial undertones sparked immediate support of Lupin by Black Martinicans. Women helped raise funds to pay the fine, and Lupin supporters took to the streets in protest, especially after his appeal was denied on August 19th that same year. Supporters quickly turned to revolutionaries, Lumina Sophie included, as thousands joined to burn plantations, destroy harvesting tools, and more. It was the collective effort of countless formerly enslaved people and their descendants who were fed up with the brutality and inequality of the plantation system and who were determined to fight for their liberty. By this time, Sophie was 21 years old, a seamstress, and 2 months pregnant. That didn't stop her and likely fueled her drive as a member of the Petrolu, or what was called at the time women revolutionaries who not only supported the insurrection, but also built arms and torches and joined, rightfully so, right in with the revolution, attacking plantation owners and burning down cane fields. Sophie was one of the leading women insurgents, and it is said that she led the destruction of 3 of the 25 plantations that were ultimately destroyed. This revolution lasted throughout the final months of 1870 until colonial troops were sent in to suppress the revolution by late January the following year. By March, trials began to charge rebel leaders for their actions, with Sophie as one of the 114 people charged and ultimately one of the only 14 women who were convicted. Although historical records are sparse when it comes to specific details about Lumina Sophie's individual actions, it's widely accepted that she was a key figure in the planning and execution of the uprising. In addition, she was very vocal about her disgust for the racist colonial system, as court testimony describes her as a quote, rebel who supposedly publicly said things like, and I quote here again, we must burn everything, nothing can be spared. If God had a shack on earth, then I would burn it as well, because he must himself be an old white man, end quote. With all of the testimony against her, she was sentenced to life in prison in French Guiana while being described by the governor of Martinique as, and I quote, the fiercest, most fearsome of the hooligan gang leaders, end quote. The end of her life unfortunately ends quite tragically as she gave birth to her son in prison, and he eventually passed away before even turning a year old. At roughly age 29, Sophie was forced to marry a former prisoner, which was a common practice at the time for female convicts that was forced upon them. She passed away 2 years later in 1879. As we always do here at Strictly Facts, there have been some tremendous ways Sophie's name has lived on, and we will, of course, bring that to light through our Strictly Facts Sound segment. And so for me, that is, knowing that there's a local high school named after her. There was a 2005 play written by fellow Martinican Suzanne Dracius, which won the Medal of Honor, as well as a biography, Lumina Sophie, called Surprise, written by Gilbert Pago in 2008. Although Lumina Sophie may not be a household name in the same way other revolutionaries certainly are, she left an indelible mark on the history of Martinique. Her story is a powerful reminder that women have always been at the heart of liberation movements, whether through direct action, leadership, or support. As we celebrate Women's History Month, we must acknowledge the trailblazers like Sophie, whose work tirelessly for rights of Black people broke rules not only by taking up arms and leading a rebellion, but by defying what some thought of as traditional gender roles, even while pregnant. She didn't just live through history, she helped make it, and for that, she should not be forgotten. Her story is one that should be told and retold, not just during Women's History Month, but year round, because it reminds us that the fight for freedom is a collective one that has always involved both men and women working side by side to break down the chains of oppression. As we reflect on the incredible contributions of Lumina Sophie, we see powerful legacy of the myriad of women who fought and continue to fight for equality in the region and diaspora. She is a symbol of resistance, of strength, as we said, and of the unyielding spirit of Caribbean unruliness. that I so love. And, in many ways is symbolic of other women like Nanny of the Maroons in Jamaica and Nanny Griggs in Barbados, who were similar bastions of freedom. During Women's History Month, let's not forget the unsung heroines of history like Lumina Sophie, who fought for their own liberation and for the liberation of generations to come. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share it with your friends and family, follow us, and leave a review. Until next time, we hope you remember that well behaved women rarely make history. Be unruly, defy the odds, and tell us on social media how you're making changes in your community today. Till next time, little more. Thanks for tuning in to Strictly Facts. Visit strictlyfactspodcast.com for more information from each episode. Follow us at Strictly Facts Pod on Instagram and Facebook, and at Strictly Facts PD on Twitter. SendWave makes it simple to send money home. Download the SendWave app, sign up, and send money home. It's really that simple and secure. Let them know I sent you by using the code BFM before you send your first transfer and get a $20 credit for your first transfer. SendWave, for here, for there, for home.